And we are back to another episode of Formula Relapse. We can't afford a soundboard just yet, but if you can hit that like and subscribe button, maybe one day in the future when we get 1,000 subscribers, we will be able to monetize this video.
I mean, that's all I want is just 1,000, 7,000, 10 million. I just want to be the most popular man in America.
I want to be more popular than Mr. Beast.
Yeah, I want to be able to walk up and slap Mr. Beast in the face and everybody claps for me. That's how popular
Standing ovation.
Yeah. And then go up on stage and talk about how I love everybody.
All right, so
even thinking about it.
Welcome to the Formula Relapse episode. Today we're going to be covering the Saudi GP. This is kind of a post-race analysis where we just kind of touch on some of the things that happened throughout the race. And, this was kind of a scary weekend for some of the drivers. There was a missile attack not too far, I think on the first day, so Friday. Kind of led to some of the workers. Well, I guess they are workers, right? Some of the F1 personnel being a little uneasy. But the Saudi GP went ahead and we went into race mode. And once the race started with Perez on pole, it was a pretty awesome race, would you say?
Oh, I had a whole lot of fun watching it. I definitely was a lot of back and forth. This track does not disappoint in terms of excitement, but I think that's just because it's dangerous. Like, it's not because this track is like the best track ever seen in their best races, but for the most part, always something is going to happen. It's too fast.
And before the GP even started, I think Yuki was making his way to the front row, or to the not the front row, but the race grid, I guess.
Yeah.
He was making his way there, and his engine lost power. So this was before the race even started. So this was like before they even did the kind of reconnaissance lap. And so Yuki was out at the very beginning, and that kind of bummed me out because I was really excited to see what Yuki could accomplish basically from last place.
Yeah, I had high hopes for him, but obviously two do not start. Schumacher, because he was fine, but the car they were worried about, if he crashed again, they wouldn't have another car for the next race. So just on hesitancy alone, Schumacher was out, and Tsunoda just issues I hope they figure out soon, because
it's pretty frustrating.
It is frustrating, and the Honda engines have not been performing. They're fast, but their reliability has been awful so far. And we're only 2 races in, so they've got plenty of time to work it out, but 2 races where multiple Honda engines give out or don't even start is pretty bad.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when I first kind of experienced that, I was like, oh Lord, Honda has not figured it out. But I think they identified the fuel issue sometime earlier in the weekend. But once the race started, Perez got a great start. He was starting from pole, kind of kept that lead, and kind of everyone kind of stayed in their positions. No one was really making up any crazy ground. And I remember the very first few laps, one of the first things that kind of popped out was Alpine's battle. Having those 2 bright pink cars battling it out. I think it was like 3 times, right? I don't know, the third time they overtook each other.
3 solid laps in the DRS zone, and I mean they were slowing each other down. But listening to the team radio live was pretty fun because they were talking to the team boss, and he was like, "We're just gonna let them race. We're gonna let it settle down, and then they'll settle into driving." And I was like, "That's awesome." It was great fun to watch. Even though they almost hit each other.
Do you think that was kind of a power play for them to see, all right, who's going to be the driver we go forward with this season? Kind of let them battle it out. Sure, we're going to sacrifice some time because I think, just like you said, right, they lost a bunch of time. I think they ended up being like 10 seconds behind Russell or something like that. And so it obviously cost them, but not really right on the long game, right, because they ended up staying near each other towards the end of the race.
Well, one DNF'd.
Right, one DNF, but for the most part, it seemed like it didn't really affect things other than them being a little farther away. But I think it gave the team a good idea of who's faster or who's better.
I wouldn't say 2 races in that they're going to this is the defining moment for a 1-2 driver. I think the team itself understands that both these guys are super competitive and really equal cars for the midfield, and they're just going to let them race. They're not going to say, you're the number 1, you're the number 2. Like, if that was last year, Bottas and Lewis, Bottas would never do something like that to slow Hamilton down. Because that was a clear 1-2 relationship. This one is more of a, we know we're not going to be number one every single time, so we want to see y'all race and we want to see y'all be competitive, even if it's with each other, as long as it's not compromising. But Bottas did catch up to them as they were fighting.
Right. Yeah. So they definitely lost ground to the person ahead of them, and they lost ground to the person that was behind them.
Yeah.
So
So
it
I
was
mean,
definitely a costly battle.
race strategy wise, but for the viewership and I think for those two drivers, I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, they definitely earned a lot of street cred with that. So I was pretty happy with it because it kept the race really exciting, and especially since I think they were fighting at the time for like fifth and sixth, right?
Yeah.
Or it was like something. It wasn't necessarily first and second place.
It was decent points.
Right. So Perez kind of had his little incident, right? He's leading the race. I think he was pulling ahead a little bit. He was staying out of the aero zone for sure for Leclerc and just kind of staying ahead. Leclerc, Ferrari kind of did that fake out, right? Where they said, all right, box to overtake. Perez, Red Bull. Maybe they were supposed to come in. Maybe they weren't. They came in. Literally as he's exiting the pits, Latifi crashes and calls out a safety car.
The timing was awful for Perez. And I mean, I would say Leclerc sort of faked him out, but it was like Perez wanted to pit while Ferrari pitted. And since Ferrari saw him pit first, he had that opportunity to say, we're going to push.
Yeah,
which gave him the ability to wait for Latifi to crash, which, I felt really bad for Latifi 2021 into the season because he was getting shit on. But after these past few races, it's like, okay, man, keep it on the track.
Right.
Like,
it's hard to
slow
defend
down and
him
keep
now.
it on the track, yeah.
Yeah, it was exciting what happened to Perez because, he would have gone from pole to most likely winning or at the very minimum finishing in second place or finishing on the podium. So it was pretty kind of crappy to see him, pull out into fourth place basically after that incident happened.
Yep. And were you talking about the exit clash with Carlos when he came in to the pits and he came out and the Ferrari was right next to him? I mean, in real time, I could not tell the difference when who was third and who was fourth.
Right.
Who sped up and who slowed down under that safety car. But what I really saw was like when they slowed it down, I mean, they were maybe a wing's difference across a line.
Yeah. Super, super close. And so I think smartly, Red Bull ended up giving that position back after the start because I think that easily could have resulted in a penalty for Perez, and overcoming a 5-second penalty is much harder than just giving the position back.
Oh yeah, it definitely would have been a penalty, and I don't agree with how smart it was to give it up right after the green flag came down. I think he could have waited like till a big turn and then given it up, so at least he would have like traded off.
Right.
And still kept the speed.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it seemed like frustration was getting into him, and his driving wasn't sloppy and he had decent pace, but he just dropped off so fast after that yellow flag.
Yeah, I think he didn't have that grid position anymore, so he couldn't fight anymore. Lap 37, 36 brought a lot of controversy in terms of reliability from the different manufacturers. I think the crazy part with that is that it was 3 different engine manufacturers that ended up getting out: Alonso, Ricciardo, and Bottas, which are Alpine, Mercedes, and Ferrari. And so those were the 3 engines that just kind of kapoots on that lap. So that was pretty crazy to kind of witness as well.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, watching them all kind of like, I thought there was a crash when I was watching it live because like one went out and then the other guy started dropping places and then somebody else started dropping places, and I was like, did they all run into each other or run into something? But what it turns out is just like, I think combined with the heat and these new cars, a lot of people are pushing for power over reliability.
Yeah.
And this was a really hot track even at night. That's why they weren't even using soft tires.
Yeah.
So these cars just were not ready for the heat, and inevitably over halfway through the race they started breaking down, which is just strange. I mean, I don't remember who it was, but it was a famous old school like driver, and he always said the best race car was one that broke down as soon as it crossed the finish line.
Yeah.
Where you get all that performance and ability out of it, and as soon as you cross the finish line, boom, it's done.
It's over.
It gave everything it had.
Yeah.
So definitely there's a balance between reliability and performance that they're missing out on. But I'm sure as it develops and with the 2023 season, it'll become a ton more reliable. But
yeah, I think this season will be kind of a wash for some of the teams, and I think in 2023 we're going to see kind of a different change as well, right? Who kind of solves their big issues? Is Mercedes going to solve their porpoising problem? Is Red Bull going to solve their reliability issues? And so,
Yeah, because right now losing out like 1 or 2 races to DNFs isn't crazy. But next year, if they get reliability down and people have a ton more time to research and manage these cars, then one race could be it, even early on.
yeah, absolutely. So one of the cool battles that we had during this race as well was Max and Charles. I'm just gonna go ahead and say I'm really excited to see them go at it for the rest of the season. I do hope Mercedes kind of gets back in their game, but I think it'll come too late. Unfortunately, I think Charles or Max are gonna run away with a lot of points, and so it's gonna lead to a really interesting battles. And obviously, there's already a lot of discussion about the DRS zones and how the drivers kind of toy around with that. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what that comes of the battle and if there's any regulation changes for the next year.
Yeah, it was really funny seeing Max and Charles like figure out where they need to be during that last DRS zone
Yeah.
in order to get advantage on the rest of the lap. And they were like playing around with each other. And yeah, I think it's super cool. I mean, DRS, in my opinion, has always been pretty powerful, especially in these cars. But now that they can be a whole lot closer and performance is so much more equal with the top drivers, like it gets crazy at the end. There's no more, somebody's 30 seconds ahead in second place is nowhere to be found driving all by themselves. That's just not fun to watch. These past 2 races have been very exciting.
Super close as well.
But about that DRS zone, the double lockup on lap 43 going into the last turn, where they're both playing that game where they can see, okay, who wants to go first? Max had the DRS before, pulled in, went to the inside, broke super early in order to try and stay behind him. And then they were both just like teasing each other with the brakes until they both had to lock up just to avoid hitting the wall. I mean, that happens so fast. It's crazy to watch how good these drivers are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm definitely excited for the rest of the season. And so, yeah, that was our take on the Saudi GP. And join us for the next few episodes we're going to have.